Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by to this chat with friends segment. I've done a couple of these so far, and I plan on doing many, many more. I'm resurrecting the spirit of my old Every Night is Game Night podcast with conversations with really, really cool people from around the gaming verse. Today, I am so privileged to have two women. They are YouTubers. They are from the Themer YouTube channel, which is a new YouTube channel, playthroughs, Kickstarter segments, reflections. I'm hoping that Maggie in particular starts to open up that mental health brain of hers and explore some of that space, just like we do on Shelf Help. We'll get into that in a second. But without further ado, I am so happy to welcome Amy and Maggie from the Themer YouTube channel. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Jason. So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited.
We met a couple of weeks ago in a big Zoom chat with lots of content creators, and I felt like, we hit it off straight away. So happy to join you on your channel.
It's funny. So I mentioned my old podcast, Every Night's Game Night. I used to have a co-host, Anthony Chatfield, who was my thinker, and we would really go back and forth. So I would just kind of do my thing, and I'm doing all I'm bombastic and everything, and Anthony just sitting there going, "Yeah, it's really good." Mm-hmm. And so when I saw the vibe that you had, I didn't even know what the concept was. I kind of just got it off of the vibe because you were like, "Oh, this," and Amy's just sitting there thinking about everything that's being said. So, beautiful vibe. I just really resonated, so I had to reach out, and I'm glad that we were make this happen, even though we are 14 hours apart.
Yes.
I am in Connecticut, USA, and you are in?
Melbourne, Australia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the future on Saturday morning.
I'm doing this on Friday night, so it's not very, actually, the last time I did talk to somebody in Australia. There's the guy who designed a game called Black Sonata. Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. I haven't played it. Yeah.
Do you know he lives near you?
Oh,
John Keane or something like that.
It's tiny. So there's only 5 of us here, so it's pretty easy.
Well, I didn't mean that he lived right there. But I did a podcast because he won the solitaire game, the BGG kind of vote game. So I had him on, and I had somebody in Arizona on, and I had somebody I think in England on. So it was England, Australia, here, Vegas. It was a mess, but we did it.
Yeah.
Board gamers, where we want something to happen, gosh darn it, we're making it happen.
Yeah, love it.
All right, so I wanted to invite you on. I didn't have a too huge an agenda, just to get to know you. I feel like this is the beginning of something, especially with the Shelf Help stuff and helping. We help each other, grow our channels and everything, and the big Zooms call. So who knows what's going to happen? But for now, let's just introduce yourselves. You have a perspective. We're going to talk about a lot more of that perspective as we get into it. But just on the face of it, you're Themer. So let's talk about Themer, how you guys approach gaming.
Well, the concept of our channel is Themers. Amy is actually the thinker. This is how we actually approach games in our daily life. We're a real life couple, and then whenever we play, she's the one that focuses on the mechanics, and that's what she loves, and that's what she lives for, and all the intricacies of how things work and play together. And I just love losing myself in the theme and the story, and how much does this game make me feel like I'm living in that world that it's trying to create. So that's essentially how we approach things, and it can be life as well. She's the creative, the musician of the two of us, and I'm an analyst, very much nerdy, pursuit spreadsheets. So I think we bring that to gaming, and often means that we have very different perspectives on games sometimes.
Awesome. And so full disclosure, YouTube listeners, this is our second time, so we're trying to figure out what was said and what was recorded and all that. But I do remember you guys mentioning Heaven and Ale.
Yes.
And playing Heaven and Ale, and it is it's one of those games that has a distinguished theme and setting. So it has a cool setting, it's set in a bar, and it's set in but the theme is zero. And so that'd be an example of a game that, in terms of, because I know you guys played more Euros and anything, a game that can, take a themer, the two of us, Maggie, and just
Yeah, and it's exactly right. Like I love that distinction where when I saw what the theme was meant to be, I was so excited about it. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to delve into this world. But then the actual way when you play it, it's like this could be anything. It's got some of the elements, but none of the actual interactivity of like learning how you would create, like brew the best ale and in a monastery, like none of that. Like it's sort of like pasted on.
Well, we did a review. We were working on a review for that game, and we argued so much because I was like, "No, there's enough theme. There's like these little cubes. They're ingredients, and you can get them all to the end of the line." She's like, "What's the line?" I'm like, "I don't know." And then she said, "Why is there a shady side? Why do you make money on the shady side?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Yeah, so that's the
works for me.
Yeah, so it's one of those, and I said I have a love-hate relationship with it because it's like I love the concept of it so much, and I find it like it actually hurts when I'm playing because it's like, oh, like it's quite, I can't wrap my head around how to break it, how to nail it, and how to but and part of the reason I think is because I can't make any thematic logic out of it. It's just it's math essentially. Yeah,
it's pretty math. It's very gussied up math. Speaking of pretty, so I was watching your channel, and I have two games that stuck out at me. You've done a bunch, like you've done Tapestry, you've done not Tapestry, Pendulum, and a couple of others. But there's two I wanted to ask you about. One I have not played, and one I have. So I wanted to definitely cover it for our audience. One of the big hotness games of this year is Mariposas. And so maybe tell the gamers, the viewers a little bit about that game and what you thought and whether we should pick it up or not.
He pronounces it the right way too.
Yeah.
Like I'm the Latina, so she's like, oh, you should do the introduction for this one so you can say Mariposas properly.
And then we gave it an Australian nickname. Yeah. We call it Mazapaza.
In Australia it'd be Mazapaza. Yeah.
When we reviewed Teotihuacan, so then, oh please, I'm all over it. If it's anything Latino, Mexicano, I have to do it because like my co-host Anthony he is whiter than white than is white, and like the first time he said it, because it was a preview podcast, and the first time, like, because I had no idea it's a Euro, so whatever. So the first time he's like, Techno Chocolate Land, and I'm like, what?
What is going on? Yeah.
Do you mean Teotihuacan? And he's like, that one. So I sat him down and I made him just go over the pronunciation so it would not be a complete disaster. Now it's pretty good. Anthony, he is actually co-host on the Board Gamers Anonymous podcast, and that's been running for 8 years. And they are now doing a live podcast. I'm doing a commercial for a completely different podcast. I don't care. It's fine. Do you guys play Board Game Arena? The online.
Yes.
So they do the live stream every week. They feature a different game. That's that Anthony. So picture him saying Techno Chocolate Land.
Look, painful in that. Yeah.
I always just be like, Maggie?
You say it. Yeah, every time we had to say the name, she would be like, you know, Maggie? But anyways, going back to Mariposas. One of the things that I loved about it is, and it's everything, like Elizabeth always does amazing theme integration into the games, and they're so rich they're also so educational, and so, and everything about it, like the migration and how you're discovering things along the way. And
what exactly is it? Like, what are you doing? Because I don't know a lot about the game at all.
Yeah. So in Mariposas, you are mimicking the migration of the monarch butterflies that go from Michoacan and from Mexico all the way up through the eastern North America and back. And they do that in about a year, but no single butterfly makes the full round trip. So along the way, they're reproducing, and then it's the offspring essentially that makes it back. So, and that's what you're doing. So the board is replicating the travel, the migration, and you're going from city to city, and you're hatching new butterflies and leveling up the butterflies so that then eventually they can come back. And there's points and ways to access that along along the way.
Yeah. From a mechanics perspective, it's basic set collection. You're along the way.
There we go. I'm like, where's the mechanism? Amy, type in. Yes, set collection. I knew it.
Sorry, just make it boring for you both.
Even for the people that are into mechanics.
That's right. You're picking up flowers, and you need flowers to be able to, give birth to the more higher powered butterflies. And then you're also collecting cards as well along the way at certain cities. And that's a set collection that opens up different end of game bonuses. So it's fairly light.
Very light, yes. And it's, a lot of people obviously are comparing it to Wingspan, which we really enjoy. And Wingspan, because there's that engine building level to it, it's actually a little bit more meaty for a heavier player. So that was one of the things. Yeah.
I can't believe that it won Best Family Game of the Year and Best Strategy Game of the Year. It's like,
it's beautiful. It's so elegant,
people.
Yeah, no, but it's so elegant. It's simple, and it's crunchy enough. I still can't crack it, but I really enjoy it every time I play it. So
Mariposas.
Yeah. But I was talking about Wingspan. With Mariposas, it's a beautiful game and a beautiful gaming experience. But because it doesn't have that next layer, it's a bit simple. So for a heavier gamer, we probably wouldn't be bringing it out to the table that often.
Yeah. It also suffers at a 2-player count, actually.
Yes.
Because you need some of the set collection is hidden until you reveal it. And when there's only 2 players, you're not revealing enough of those things to then know where you need to go to finish your set. Yeah. So I think it would be much better at a higher player count, I suspect.
Okay. Yeah. But I recommend.
Yeah, I recommend for like light gamers, or for, if you're trying, like I could imagine playing it with my mom, who would, not really into board games, but it's simple enough that I could teach her, and she would love the flowers, and it's such a beautiful board.
And from an education point of view, there's a lot of obviously teaching of helping the habitat or the ecosystem of these butterflies, because they're kind of approaching level of endangerment and all that. So that's quite nice as another component of it. Yeah.
Have you guys heard of herbaceous and herbaceous sprouts?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's a Kickstarter coming soon.
Yeah, I haven't played it.
Next week.
Have you played it? No.
I haven't, no.
Herbaceous sprouts?
Yeah.
So the second one, it sounds like, because like herbaceous was like a simple card game, and then herbaceous sprouts was like the board game that I can play with my mom. Like Ito did the playthrough for the Kickstarter with his mom. As to make the point that this is a family game that you can teach mom. So Mariposas is a game is in that realm, is what you're saying.
Exactly it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be where we would put it. Yeah.
Set collection and monarch butterflies and whatever kind of butterflies. Hopefully that is enough to whet your appetite, and you can go ahead and learn more. The other game that I want to ask you about, and this is one I have played, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I haven't talked about this yet. I am doing a video for this one on the Dice Tower in a couple weeks, but I saw it on your channel. And I really want to ask you, thinker and themer, because I think this game does a really good job of integrating both, is Obsession.
Oh, yeah, we love
Obsession with the upstairs, downstairs expansion. So Obsession, we've talked about. I liked Obsession. The expansion came out. So just a very simple, like it's another engine building type-ish game. Right there it is. Right on hand. There you go.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite game at the moment.
Really?
Like the whole from all of Orwell Quarantine.
It might be your call for 2020. I think it was the second edition.
It was a themer's dream come true. Like the theme integration is just so beautiful.
So very simple mechanism wise, it is a game where it's a resource management game, right? And you have different types of resources. So you have your servants, and the servants have to, you have their little meeples, and you have to use your servants in order to play certain cards along with certain tiles. So like you have tile resources, card resources, and meeple resources, and they kind of crisscross, right? So in that game, you have to like play your cards and play your meeples in a way that maximizes the tile that you play. So that's very thinker.
Yes.
The theme is the servants are running around and serving the cards, which are the gentry that are visiting, and the tiles are like the events that you play. So like you are having the best events. And so like you're hosting bigger and better events, you bring in more and more people in, you're having more and more servants flow in, and you can definitely get into the headspace. I'm huge on headspace in gaming in both ways. But like, okay, we have little dinky events, we have the village fair, we have all these little things. And now we're hosting, like big smoking room with 17 people in here, and where they're bringing in the money and they're bringing in reputation. I could go on about it, but like, tell me a little bit more about why it's your game of the year.
Well, for me, it just did such a beautiful job of making me feel in that world, to the point where even for the thinker, like you were saying, that she hates anything that's like a period piece or
Really?
period like older type.
Why?
Everything that still got into this. I don't know. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. But like, she gets into like the accent. Oh, we're having an afternoon tea, and we're going to. So she gets into it.
It's true.
Which is, and I just think, and like I had to go back and watch Pride and Prejudice, because it was like I was just so immersed in it that I was like, I need to go back. Because you do feel like that gossipy feel, and the reputation, and all that orchestrating what guests you're going to use, and this one gives you money, but I love the American heiress who brings in money, but the reputation's not so good.
Is it kind of a dirtbag? You don't want him around.
Yeah. Like, but it's film, so you kind of have. So I just love how the level of detail that went into every character and to every one of those cards. Where, as I mentioned in the review, like to the point where Amy would do something, it's like, oh, this allows me to get rid of 2 guests. I'm like, oh, why? It's like, oh, because it says so. I'm like, no, why? Because there's actually an explanation of why this character, they're unsavory. So guests literally want to leave your party. So it's like, that is just beautiful. Like everything just makes sense. It tells a whole story.
Yeah. You could tell that it was a real passion project by Dan Halligan. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, what I thought was interesting about this game is that I struggled so much to learn it. And usually, usually I go through the rule book. Usually, most of the time I do the teach, because, I'm so into the mechanics. And this time we both read the rule book, and I just could not wrap my head around it, because it was so laden with story and the reasons why you were doing everything. And I was just like, I don't care why. I just need to know what I need to do. And it took, like, Maggie thrashed me in the first few games.
I hadn't even read the rule book yet. At that point, she read the rule book. She taught the game to me. And I'm like, this makes perfect thematic sense. And like from game 1, I was like, yep, I need more sermons. I need to do this. I need to, like, I was in Downtown Abbey. I was like getting things done. and Amy's like, what is happening? What do I need to? I'm like, just like get into the feel of it. If you are running that household and you're trying to get that reputation and attract the fair child, eligible young men and women, what would I have to do? Like, there you go. You're rewarded for the real life scenario. So
I had the exact same issue relearning it. Like I learned it. What was it? I think I was taught at PAX, like, because he was there. Like Dan was just there, like just play my games. Like, all right, I'll play your game.
Yeah.
So got a review copy and covered it on a podcast and everything, and then like put it away because the second issue was coming out. So the second issue comes in, and the upstairs downstairs expansion, which by the way is basically more servers. That's what it is, more servers, and they're like that's what you get, and some scenarios. So there is there's this. The expansion adds a lot, and I think this a player is going to want the expansion eventually, but you don't need it. It's like more, right? It doesn't like change the game too much.
Yeah,
just to kind of drop it in there. Yeah. So then, the second edition comes in, and everything comes in, and I wanted to relearn the game, and it's like, what's happening? Because it's 7 phases, right? And like each phase has its own little like things going on. And then each phase can kind of have an exception. So like you have a tile that manipulates this phase, and you have a card that manipulates that phase. And then if you get a butler, the butler operates during this phase, but not during that phase. So like the fact that the turn order is like broken up like that, I think creates a mental learning barrier that doesn't quite really need to be there. I was hoping that like, there was a little bit, whatever, it's kind of smooth that out a little bit. I'm not really sure if that was possible, but I think that's what you mean by like it was hard to learn.
Yeah, it was a bit fiddly. I found it fiddly to begin with, and I think it is. There were probably too many different stages, and you're trying to, and there's lots going on because between your cards and the, like you said, all the different resource management element. And also I think that the rule book was missing like a 1-page summary, which now I know some users have designed that, and it's on BGG now. But it was kind of like, but how does this all play out?
Right. Yeah. And I think like because of that, it leads to my it's my biggest criticism. I don't like, I kind of don't call it like a criticism, because if you learn to play, it's not a problem, but like you can get smoked, like annihilated in this game. It reminds me of Raid for the Galaxy in that the things have to come together. Like you have to realize how they come together. So like if you hit your national holiday, but you don't have the big reputation tile to play during national holiday, which is like you can play anything, no reputation thing, whatever. So like if you hit that holiday and you're not ready for it, or like, you know, if you are like set certain things up, but you're like 100 pounds short, then it's like, wah, wah. So there's a lot of ways that you can just like, and your score is like half of what it could have been.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
in other games, like I said, Heaven and Ale, you know, those point spreads aren't huge. Like you can kind of like keep pace as long as you're not like, you know, terrible. In this game, like you can really kind of get broken, and that could be a really frustrating experience. So I think that's probably what happened to Amy.
Steep learning curve, I would say, on this game. And it wasn't until I really embraced the theme that it started to all come together for me. And, you know, I'm not usually one to do that or need to do that. But in this game, I think you really need to understand what you're trying to achieve from that bigger picture and building up your family estate. And the hand management is particularly tricky. Thinking, you know, 3 or 4 steps ahead is not as easy as it is even in other Euro games that we play, I think.
I find it so interesting now because, like, now I'm kind of going, why did I find it so easy? And maybe it's because I've rewatched Pride and Prejudice, like, kid, you know, at least 30 times. Like, it was one of those, like, back in the day, like, that DVD just, like, played until it just could not play anymore. And it was just such a known world to me, the whole, like, matchmaking and, you know, and that era and he makes $20,000 a year. And, like, their estate. So it was like a duck to water. So that was, so I didn't actually have that barrier, which is nuts because I often do have that barrier. So it was like a nice relief to like have a game.
Oh my god, that's why this game is the best, because I'm not sucky at it.
I don't suck at it. So I guess it takes all kinds.
And we'll never play it again. No, I'm kidding. Maggie's too good at it. No.
So a big recommend for me. I really once I got past the barrier of it, and you know, I think solo. I'm a huge solo player, and I'm kind of like throwing solo chum to like those listeners who listen for my solo. That one, you know, go ahead and take a look if you want something for 2020, because it hasn't been a much. You know, 2020 has been because of COVID, because of all that kind of thing. So I mean, those are the games.
I haven't actually played that solo. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so like those are the 2 games I wanted to ask about. I mean, you guys have done more gaming over COVID. Like, you know, maybe talk about either what you played or just the experience of gaming during COVID.
Yeah, well, I think the experience side of things is that we generally play with 4 players. We have lots of different other couples that we play with. So a lot of the time it's a 4-player game, and it's usually a pretty heavy game at that. And we actually don't usually play a lot of games, just the 2 of us. And so COVID in Melbourne, I know it's like different all around the world, right? But in the state of Victoria in Australia, it's been particularly harsh. It's been one of the more conservative places in the world. And we've actually been in lockdown for about 6 months now. Like at the moment we can have 2 hours outside of the house a day, so it's still pretty locked down.
Full on.
And we haven't seen, you know, colleagues since March and that kind of thing. So usually when we're into group gaming, and now we've been re-looking, I guess, at our collection from that 2-player lens and getting out some of our favorites and being like, okay, well, how does this work at 2 players? And that's actually been quite a fun experience because it's like relearning a lot of our games, but also now like opening up a world of other games where we're like, okay, well, people who love 2 players or solo experiences love these games. Like, let's buy those and check those out. And of course, all we've got is time. So we've been playing lots and lots of games, and we've been getting into like painting as well. That's a whole other, you know, rabbit hole.
Painting miniatures.
Painting miniatures. We've discovered like a few really great games. One of them in particular, you might have seen our review of Calico.
Amy loves that game. I really enjoy
this game.
She loves it.
Like, I was not expecting. I'm not a, you know, small box games. You know, we just love big Euros that take up the whole table, right? And getting Calico, you know, through Kickstarter, I was just like, oh yeah, cats on quilts and sounds pleasant enough. Maybe something that I'd play with my mom or lighter groups. But it is super thinky. Like, have you played it?
Nope.
I haven't played it. It's like you're drafting tiles.
What's the player count?
Oh, that's a good question.
1 to 4.
1 to 4. Yeah, there's 4 boards. Yeah. And in the game, all you're doing, it's really simple, is there's just 3 different tiles that you can take, and they are all different colors and different patterns. And so you're color matching and pattern matching, and you're just taking one of the three and placing it down on your board. And that is all you're doing. So it's really easy to get people into this game straight away. Not that I've taught anyone aside from Maggie, but I imagine it would be very
theoretical people. When you see them,
people bring the dog. Okay, so this is how this plays.
Yeah. But I can't wait to teach people it, because it's very easy to get your head around. But then what's interesting about it is it's a bit like there are objectives on your board that reward you for collecting sets of like either 3 dotty patterns or 3 green, tiles. And so it's either color or pattern, but sometimes you get more points if you can do both. So if you can get a set of 3 dotty green tiles, that's going to give you more points. And the real thing for me is that they overlap. The puzzles overlap. The objectives overlap. Sorry. So if you're trying to collect 3 green dotty tiles, but then you've got another objective that requires you to have all different tiles, it gets really confusing. And it's kind of like working through a Sudoku, because you're like, well, if I place this there, I'm going to mess up this part of the puzzle. But then maybe I just forego that and focus on, just getting what I can get, because there's, you're drawing tiles, so there's a bit of luck in it in terms of what comes out. But yeah, I didn't expect to love it, and we both really, really enjoyed it. Yeah,
I love how you mentioned cats at the very beginning, and then there was no mention of cats right after. You're just doing puzzle things.
Irrelevant.
From a theme point of view, like the theme integration, it's cute because you're aiming for certain patterns.
Okay.
And certain cats, so you have like 3 different cats, and each cat has their preference of pattern. So if you manage to make their pattern, then you're going to attract that cat to your quilt. And then you get, the extra points for that. So there's a little bit of theme from that point. And then like buttons and stuff that you can get if you get, so it's cute. It's not like a super rich thematic experience. Right. It's just a fun, light, not light. It feels like a light game.
It's a short game.
Short, but there's a lot of layers in it. Yeah,
I think when it comes to Euros, I don't have high expectations. I just don't want the theme to fight the game. I don't want the theme to kind of just drive me into a ditch and like, okay, I'm doing this, but I really want to do this. Like I had that problem with Charterstone, because like I don't know if have you guys played Charterstone?
Yes.
Did you play the whole thing?
We have one
episode 2 years in.
10 years.
Getting a team together
of 6
people, and it's just like finding the time for all of us to get together. That was our biggest mistake. Yeah,
rookie error.
I've played the full campaign online. Like I've played it with the app. So now I know what happens. I've got the spoilers.
Right.
Well, they can go different ways, but mostly it's
stupid king. I really wanted to build. Like I really wanted to like go down the trees and build, but like I was in a group with a bunch of gamers who were like, I want to maximize the points. So it's like points, game over. I wanted to explore this game, and
I love that sense, of creation. Like you're building towards something, you're making something, you're bringing something together. And one of the things like with Charterstone is it often forces you to destroy stuff that you've built, because it's like, every game, like you're swapping this, and it's like, but I really like that.
Yeah, I thought it was a village. It says it in the box, a village building game. Can I?
Yeah, it's like, but every season you destroy it and you kind of redo it. It's like, why? Yeah.
Anyway, so I mean, no, this is great, man. I mean, I love hearing about all these different things. I love hearing about the experience. That you are, because in America, the experience of lock isn't really lockdown. Like it's, because we're so individualist. So it's like, don't tell me what to do. So like there's this, even like the Democratic left-leaning like blue states, like we couldn't accept like not leaving our house in 2 hours a day. Yeah. Like we just couldn't accept it. So like, we've had our issues kind of contraining the virus. So like, it's fascinating to hear like, and you guys aren't like dissimilar. Like it's still an English speaking westernized country, but like, it's just been such a different experience. It's like being hard locked down, accepting it, like, and the economy hasn't like collapsed, I assume, I mean,
let's put into the economy.
There's like, we have a job keeper system where businesses are getting, paid per employee. So there's a lot being done in the background to kind of prop up business. I'm worried about when that goes away, but yeah, I think like where we are in particular has been pretty strict because we had quite a big second wave.
Yeah.
They had some issues with the quarantine hotels that got out of control. And so we had to go back into quite strict lockdown, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Coming out of it now.
But, you know, the right thing to do with, numbers have come right down. So, yeah.
And so like the numbers are coming down and hopefully you guys will get back to your gaming group.
Yeah, that's right. We're like 15 a day now, 15 new cases a day, which is really low, but we've still got a month of lockdown at least. So, yeah.
Like in Australia or in like in Victoria? Or?
Victoria, but there's no cases.
But really also all of the borders are shut between states, so you can't go anywhere anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think we got 15 cases in the span we've done this podcast so far here in America.
It's unfortunate.
I don't want to go too down that rabbit hole.
As a health professional, like when it first started, like people were asking me about, you know, what do you think? And I'm like, well, very early days. Like, well, you know, I have a feeling that probably we don't know the extent of it. And it might be, the death rate might be similar to flu. Was I wrong?
I remind her about that like every second day. So remember when you said,
no, we didn't know. I wasn't really downplaying it. I was like, well, we don't know yet. So I don't know if we need to.
Right.
But we are missing our gaming groups. And, you know, we were meant to be in the US this year and we were meant to be at Gen Con and all of those great things.
So many things,
And you were meant to be married.
Yeah, we were meant to be married in California.
Yeah, that had to be postponed.
Yeah, I mean, we've been together for 10 years and we picked the 1 year, the
absolute worst year,
to the worst year to get married. But I mean, you know, in the big scheme of things, it's just a cancelled event, isn't it? So, so
and that is another reason I wanted to have you on the channel. Because you mentioned that I asked it in the Zoom calls, like, okay, what is the vision of people's channels and everything? And you guys went there first. Like, you know, you said the thinker themer thing, but like the impetus was you wanted to represent in a positive way two women in love, you know, who are very, you know, you want that message and that example to be out there that this is, you know, positive, it's beautiful. So, I mean, I'm really interested in that. So I have something to say, but I wanted to just kind of give you the floor and invite you to articulate, you know, your vision and the love that you want to share with people and the image that you want to share.
Yeah, I think like the biggest part for us is just visibility. And that's about not just, you know, being a gay couple, but for all of the diverse people that are in gaming. You know, like we meet a lot of queer people in gaming. We meet people of all races, genders, sexualities, you know, and we feel that everyone should be able to contribute to, I feel like in, you know, obviously board gaming has been around for a long time. We're probably much newer to it than other people. And a lot of the voices are quite similar in board gaming. You hear, you know, and there's been a lot of work done to represent more women in gaming. There's still a lot of work to be done there, I think. But in terms of queer representation, we don't see it enough. And I feel like it's just it's similar to in real life when we've both worked in business and being out and just being out and being, you know, able to show younger people that there's someone like you out there. Like that's super important to us. And even if we're not always like, you know, with our flags and kind of being full on activists, it's just like being ourselves.
We're in Maggie, the queer couple. Here's Mariposas.
The rainbow flag and all of that. You know, we just are who we are and we've been out since we were really young. And so to see, you know, an engaged couple just, you know, when you log into YouTube, like there should be more of that. So I guess we're just trying to contribute to that diversity.
Absolutely. Like, so my personal experience with it. So I am straight and I've been told by queer folk, LGBTQ, that I'm really straight. Like I drink beer like a straight guy. You drink that beer like a straight guy. I was like, I guess so. Okay, fine. Really straight. But I consider myself an ally. And my very first job was a Catholic school teacher in high school. And if you want an interesting place to be gay and young, go to Catholic school.
Yeah.
And, you know, I became known as the cool teacher. And, you know, people, you know, a couple of kids kind of came out to me and they were dating. It's like, okay, help us through this whole thing. It's like, and it kind of, you know, it stayed with me, right? You know, and this was years ago. Like I taught in like 2000 something. I don't know. Too long ago. But it stayed with me, and every stop that I've made, like, and I've worked in, you know, child protection, I've worked in prisons, I've worked in all these places as a social worker, and it's there. Like, it's just there all the time. And, you know, as I've been in gaming the last like 5-6 years, you know, it's, I don't know, like maybe you can tell me a little bit more about how, like you mentioned before, like you want that visibility in gaming. So, but maybe you can talk about your experience, kind of, you know, you've been to Gen Con and you've been, you know, talking with content creators. And so like maybe talk about like how gaming in general or different communities receive, you know, your couple.
Yeah, I think that like we've never been negatively received. I should put that out there. And when we go to cons, there's often like kind of queer tracks and things, like there's events that you can attend, and there are always so many gamers at those events, whether they're queer people or allies, and that's fantastic. It's more in the content creation space, just having different faces, I think is quite important to us, but also that I think we're at like an interesting time now where LGBTIQA plus people have had all the letters.
It changes every 5 minutes.
Who
do we need to include today?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love everybody. Everyone's included. But in terms of like, I think it's an interesting time because there's far more acceptance. So like I said, people don't receive us negatively, but there's also like less of a platform for having the conversation and about lifting people up around you. And what I find really interesting is there's like little known in the forum on BGG, there's a Rainbow BGG forum. And what's interesting about that historically is that there were a lot of people who were fighting to have that forum set up. So that people could have a safe space to discuss issues that were important to them. And there were kind of two camps in that. There was the camp that was like, well, you know, we don't have a problem with it. You're not being held back. So like, why not just put it in general gaming forum? Like, why not just talk in there? Why should you have your own space? And then the other camp was like, no, because people need to feel like they're safe and they can express concerns that are unique to them. And why is that any different to having a women in gaming kind of channel? And so that debate has been really interesting to us because as, you know, young gay people, I feel like you do need still to have that sense of like someone you can identify with, someone you can talk to about. I think that there's a lot of progress that still needs to be done in trans rights and trans visibility in particular. I still think that you see in forums, you know, someone will bring up the topic of pronouns, and there's still a lot of conflicts that goes into those conversations, and you know, that really hurts to see that, because that was kind of gay people, you know, 10 years ago, probably even less than that.
It's like the mocking and things like that, like not taken seriously, and so it's like we still have a long way to go.
It's funny you mentioned that because, like, you know, I'm glad to hear that you guys have had positive experiences. Not universal. I've definitely had some friends who have not had such positive experiences. Glad to hear that some people have. But I think the pronoun thing is really triggering for people. Like, you know, I get it. I can understand the lifestyle, the business, you know, what goes on in your bedroom is your business and all kind of thing. But I think that's gotten better, that particular mindset. But like, the pronoun thing is like, now you're changing the way I talk, and now I have to police the way I talk, and now I have to like, okay, are you a they? Are we making up a new word? Is this a Z? Is this can I call you here? And I think that that creates another level of like short circuit for people. I mean, is that correct perception?
Yeah. So I think part of it is that understanding. So one is that awareness, because that's starting a new conversation or creating an awareness of an area that's always been there. It's just never really been allowed to blossom or flourish because of all the norms of, you know, the social constructs and the culture that we live in or whatever it is. So I think there's part of it is that starting that conversation and becoming aware of that and why that is an issue or why that should be something that you did. It will take a little bit of potentially mental bandwidth to get used to it, but it's important. Like, it's actually going to have a very emotionally powerful impact in someone that you have taken the time to do that. And there's also an understanding that, you know, it's a transition culturally, so you're not expected to always get it right. So I think a lot of times we get really paralyzed that, I'm going to say the wrong thing, so I'd rather just not. And then we get angry and then we lash out at, well, why should I in the first place? Where it's like, well, you know, there's a big acceptance that we're all learning, we're evolving, and even like we're in the community and we get the acronym wrong. Like, we're like, oh, what was this letter or that letter? And it's fine to be be kind with yourself. And, okay, no, I'm learning. And there's an acceptance that just because someone is trying, like, that's actually really good. That's that actually means quite a lot to someone like me, for example. So,
I am so happy, Maggie, that you mentioned that, because like you're in it, but even you get the acronyms and the diction wrong. And it's like, I was just on a call, it's going to release in a couple of weeks. And I was talking about like the experience of minorities, and it came up in a certain context, and I called them minorities because that's what I used to call them when I was, in college and this all stuff. And like, we are, as a culture, we are so past calling it minorities. Like now we, you call it POC, and now like there's BIPOC, which is kind of a new thing this year, which BIPOC drives me nuts. I'm nuts.
I don't even know what it is. What's BIPOC? What's
so POC is person of color, and then BIPOC is Black and Indigenous person of color. So it's kind of specifier as like, okay, these two communities kind of are at the, like, it's an American thing. And it's like, okay, this is the original sin of America, that, Blacks were slaves and Indians were displaced. So like, we kind of need to center that particular experience as distinct from some of the other experiences. And I'm not a big fan of distinguishing those things, so I'm just going to leave it there. So like just the idea, and I'm so glad you mentioned that, like even the terminology within the community is contentious. And maybe, when somebody's outside is struggling with that terminology, it's like, well, we're struggling too. And I think that there's even a opportunity for bridging in acknowledging that shared struggle of like, what do we call each other? And and like, let's just work this out together, as opposed to kind of like, okay, let's just go full hog into like calling this, that, or that thing.
Yeah, and I think it's like very similar to all the race conversations that are going on in America right now. It's just like having an open heart and being willing to be educated and to contribute to the conversation and understand someone else's experiences. I think that's just the most important thing. And when it comes down to pronouns, it's like, that's one change that's going to be really uncomfortable for you to make, but that other person has suffered with, through their whole life with this experience, and it's really just a small thing for us.
Such an important point. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, it's such an important point that like, I see like, people feel aggrieved when they have to change something, like change the way they think or what they say. And it's like, the other side's been aggrieved the whole time.
Yeah. This is not a choice.
So what's the future? I guess the channel is the future. And, do you plan on kind of addressing conversations? Do you plan on like kind of moving in that direction, or is it going to kind of be a little bit more of a subtle approach where it's like, look at us and we're doing our thing? Like, what are you thinking? What's right for you two?
Yeah, well, I feel like we're not trying to be the voice for everyone. I think like everyone is individual in their experience, but we're definitely trying to have a conversation with our community, and we have been quite active in different channels and asking, well, why isn't there a Facebook group? Or like with BGG, why isn't Rainbow BGG featured on the front page? Why aren't queer designers getting more kind of conversation happening around that? Because they are there and they're producing amazing games that are well known by people, but that's kind of not highlighted. And so
Nikki Whalen, she's my girl. I love her. Quirky Circuits, I'll play it all day.
Well, and a lot of her stuff is in horror, which kind of locks us out.
We don't tend to play a lot. We don't tend to play a lot of, to the risk of alienating a lot of people. We don't tend to do a lot of space stuff. We don't tend to do a lot of horror stuff. I don't mind horror, but she hates horror because she genuinely gets very scared. So we can't watch any content that's horror related, or even just suspenseful. Like, it's not a thing. But also, anything that's like, what else? Like a heavy fantasy, we tend to not like kind of go into, which is why the Euro.
But that's so hard then to find a highly thematic game that is none of those things.
Right.
We wear all the
which is why Obsession is so good. It managed to be thematic and outside of those things, like a lot of historical games. And
but I see like in the background there, you've got Bit of Culture, and that was probably one of our gateway games that I love. How it's a Euro, and it's just like the thematic integration is so beautiful, because you've got from the moment of planting your vines, making sure you've got the right facilities to do that, to the type of grape that you're going to get, to the type of wine that you're going to be able to make, to then the type of orders that, like, it's just that's another great example of a beautiful theme integration, and that was probably one of the gateways for us into the gaming world.
Wine growing is all about timing. and the fact that the game is all about timing.
Yes.
When do you pluck the grapes?
Yeah.
And you can only have these actions in the sun time, and then you get this different set of actions in the nighttime. And like the flow of time in that game is superb. So that's a 9 out of 10 game for me. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Us
right
up there.
It's like I love games that have a sneaky teach in them. And I think that one is one where you get out with friends, you're trying to convince them of heavier gaming, and it teaches them about timing and about, thinking about their objectives in stages.
Yeah. And the theme attracts a lot of people, which is good. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Tell me more. I was like, okay. And then you've got them. Now you're in.
So the channel is Thinker Themer. We've been talking with Amy and Maggie. What do you got left immediately coming up in your channel? Is it more reviews and Kickstarters? Do you have anything in particular that you're featuring that you'd like to talk about?
No, we're so new to this that we're just, as we're getting games, we actually just received PAX Premier, second edition, never played it, but we're going to give that a go this weekend and eventually review it. But yeah, we're just trying to focus on the Kickstarter stuff that we're doing, Kickstarter diaries, and then also our reviews and kind of spool up from there. But we're very new to this, and we're still learning along the way, and it's been and it's been amazing meeting people like you, Jason, people who are so willing to share and give us tips and help us get started. So.
Thinker Themer, go subscribe to the channel. Same thing with Shelf Stories over here. So every subscription counts. Every time we get the little notification, the little bell pops up. It's like, yes,
yes, right. Yes.
Validation. Yes, all the
work. Any other channels that people can reach out to you?
At the moment, we're mainly focusing on YouTube. I've only just set up the Twitter account, much to my chagrin. But we've got a Facebook as well. We've got Twitter,
you can
Facebook,
friend us on Facebook under Thinker Themer as well.
They're both Thinker Themer, so at Thinker Themer. Yeah, Facebook, just look up Thinker Themer and you'll find us there.
Yeah, we will not be strangers. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for having us, Jason. Love the chat.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey! That was even recorded the whole time. Steph.